Malo lau malia ho eiki pe malo lelei ai tonga katoa pe. A very warm greetings to all our audience this evening and welcome. Parenting can be very challenging at times without the added stress from COVID-19. And this evening, I would like to welcome Taitai lelei ki moa Viliami and Sylvia Liava'a he fiafini. Mo whakamalo atu ke te ki moa he lototo. Kai kaunga kau foki mo ki mautolu ai Langima'a. Pa pe foki ki he foundation no i hono whakapaanga ko kalama ko eni. Ke mauha hangai tokoni mo a poupou ki ho tau ka inga he lolotonga ko eni. Ai ko viti taha hiwa pe mohono ngahi taau, mohono ngahi whainga taa. Viliami ka taki te utuku at pe ki a koe ke kamata mai, whamole mole pe, ke whakahoko mai pe koe. Just introduce yourself, both personal and professional. Te pe hoko mai ka Sylvia, and then we will continue to the questions. Malo.
Alo, pekau mau peng mari peko ufanga ngai talfam. Ngai whakatapu tope ko whaafak pe mi wharin kai atamu ke kau ki programaman. Ko kuingoa ko Viliami tu pofutuna Liava'a. Koe ku tangata iki pe mi hawakatolo kolo vai. Koe ku whine iki pe mi whareloa hapai ka ma afuui. Koe tupu hake peitonga, whanei tonga, tupu hake peitonga. Toki rere mai peki New Zealand ki he whangi whainga ako pia whok peitonga ngau i tonga. Toki hiki mai mei tonga he wāwhitaha ua, pia mohokoa. Koe teu peia ke whaere i uwhanga whakatapu. Ai ku ohi whine lahi pena e uhinga e hiki whanua mai. E kum whainga maari mai whanau. Hangi peko ngahi talanoa e ngahi whamiri tokola. Pero uhinga e ku he ni pe mau inga i he programa ko ni ko inga pe ko e whewa mai ak me whetu koni aki. O ko ngau he pot ngau e Mātakai Pasifiki. Ko e Principal Policy Advisor i he pot ngau ko e me tau whitu e ni ngau he pot ngau e fuhua ngau e peni e ngau e peni New Zealand ko ngai mai pot ngau e pako ke whakaunga tāmaki pe ai. Whiwhia ki kau mai ke programa Malo ku te whakau.
Malo Viliami.
Male, ko ingoa ko Sylvia Tafuna Liava'a. Hange ko introduction of Saane. Viliami is my husband. Ko kulele mai me ko tangata aiki me ko motua for motu. Ko pego fine aiki me nuku nuku folaha mo niwa toktapu. Hange ko me ne lava kia Viliami takai whala ki he vaiko hiwa, kai pehe ki whale loa. Ko ma whanau e toko wha, ko lahi taha, ko loisi, o ku tau hiwa, suli, tau fitu, ko kulu, tau o ngalo tau tolu mahalo, tau tolu. Pea ko sisi taha, tau taha. So we're a very, very busy family. I'm currently teaching. I'm a secondary teacher at Marcelin College. My area is music, but I'm also teaching languages as well.
Okay. Yeah. Malo pito Viliami mo Sylvia because the head o ku tau tui lahe ngai tata ke he o ku tau tui he. But coming to parenting, it's very interesting, and it's usually the space that make the most impact in the people that means the most to us. From a cultural perspective, what differences do you see in our traditional way of raising children compared to what is considered good parenting here in New Zealand context?
I think can we be bilingual in our Talanoa?
Oh yeah. The space is ours.
Yeah. Thank you. I think parenting is to me personally, it's a complex topic in area because my parenting style can be different from others, and what could I see that effectively work for my children and my family won't be the same as others, and I think it's different from culture to culture, country to country, in terms of how we do parenting. Personally, for me, I was born and grew up in Tonga, so when I reflect back on my parents' parenting, if I can put it into simple words, there are, I think, three. My dad were so strong in education and being honest. So he was work for Treasury in Tonga, and then when the Reserve Bank was established, he moved there. So him is about ako, so every time it was about those two things. One thing that he was was the land. He was saying, your brain is your land, because your brain can take you anywhere in the world. So that was the thing behind it. Being honest, so come to my mom, she was very spiritual. My mom was like koki, fo, alkitahi, alki uta, weaving, akonaki ki mautol. Main thing that she did was lot way kona tope kona me manala mai mawinga akonaki tuange lot of ke kakai ko reflect the alge. So ko me ta na fatongai, when they talk we hardly ask questions, because from us what they're saying is very true, right? And it's hard to ask questions at a time. Our parents talk, so no so how working Nusilani, I realized that has to change. They expect so if we won't allow that it will be hard to ask a question. So to me, cultural tau whanau ko nau tupakai tonga moe whongai pausio i Nusilani ki mea ton ki ako e whanau. That has to change. He allow whanau a space to ke nau trust kita. Ko kita ai fōfua toko taha ko tamai pe ko whae ke lere mai kia te kita masi ko ene whaingata ia ko tala mai kia pe ko ene mamahi ko kita fōfua lere mai kia pe ko ene whiawhia ko kita o fōfua lere mai kia o i kai ko hatana ke lere ia o hua i kai ene mamahi pe aro o tala kia ene whiawhia. So we ko wanga I whakakau, I see it from that way. There has to balance ala ko e tau whanau whakatonga o tau hanga maheni ki ai context koe o e whonua o tau nofo ai. And that's why na aku kumitokoni au ia ki ngahi parenting. I record a whaifkau koe whofua parenting program na kau ki ai i Nusilani ko hinga pe koe mea peheni koe heilala fungani. Malo wana tahao no ia. So mainly peia kia te au na kongo I need help he koe tapaki ko ia. So I need to draw the balance of how to balance e ilo ai tawi whanau whakatonga pa mo tawi whanau I whonua ko Nusila o ko o mai ki ai pa mo teu ke mo whare I koe matahine lahi. I need to make sure koe koe foundation ni koe o ku langa e mo ui o e ma ki family mo anga e ku whakawhianga i ke whanau, it has to be i context o nusilani. So koe foi whakapalanisi e nau ki o kia. So o koe perere mo kovi o e o ngomea e ua, but you have to whakapalanisi. Because at the end of the day, o whemau ke hanko au, pa me whanau, leo na whare i nusilani, whemau peke na ui loko tonga ki nau tō. Which means, o koe ngahi mea tau value, o whaame au ia ke value e ko he whanau. Ange peko ko tāna koe ki mua ke dad, mum o dad. Na value e faith, spiritual life. Na value e mea koe whaimooni, honesty. Value mea koe ako. So ngahi mea koe, parenting ia, ngahi values whemau ke pass on ke tau whanau. So which is koe no whakapalanisi ia mea koe cultural, tau whakatonga, mo tau mai ke whonua. O koe pe pau peke ai mea ke enga ki ai, kai lava ke stable, otherwise they float pe mea hono kotoa. So to me, he psio koe ki he our cultural parenting, and here in New Zealand, it has to be a very fine balance young adult parenting, but it has to be anchored he mea o ku tolonga.
Our values.
And values.
Malo, Viliami. Via?
Thanks, Saane. Yeah, the importance of balance. You know, I'm different. I was born and raised in New Zealand. You know, spent some time in Tonga teaching at Toloa there, you know, lived in the village and learnt about the Tongan life, which, you know, I learnt a lot about the culture, the values, the cultural values, which has really helped me to understand, you know, the Tongan cultural aspect of what Viliami is talking about. And I think for me, I'm lucky because I saw that in practice while living in Tonga. It will be I you know, assume that it might be different for those who are in our position, who have, you know, a Tongan-born, a New Zealand-born Tongan who you know, come together to form a family, and you know, there are some pulls and pushes in there. In the marriage. But I think for me personally, you know, I agree with what Viliami said. There's definitely a need to balance, you know, and I'm very heavy on the other spectrum of the stick, where, you know, I'm into you know, encouraging my children to be very critical thinkers, to question when they need to, whenever they need to always think of, you know, look at something not black and white, you know, from different perspectives, which sometimes can be perceived in a Tongan perspective as, you know, you know, whatever it is, or, you know, that child could be challenging. But again, it's also understanding as well. You know, we live, I have my parents living with us as well, who really enforce more of what Viliami has spoken about, you know, on the Tongan aspect. And I think I'm the balance of the westernized mind with our children. And I think, you know, for us, as a family, it works. And, you know, in saying that, there's always room for improvement and development, because it's, you know, it's just the way it is. You know, like Viliami said, parenting is such a complex thing. There's no manual for it, to be honest. But I feel every child's different. Every family's different. We have, you know, we could be brought up in the same family, but we end up having different values, and you know, so yeah, so that's my add on to that.
And it's interesting, because even though you're both Tongans, it sounds to me that almost like it's a cross-cultural marriage.
Very much so.
That's what it sounds to me. Viliami, na whaelei ai tonga, tūpu hake tonga ne mo I toki mai great mai ki heni koe uhi, koe sio koe whanau ke nau tūpu hake o mau e whainga maali ai ako. You were born and raised here, Sylvia, even though in a Tongan context, but in a very Western environment. Very Western environment, and you are encouraging the development of whanau psychologically and emotionally to be critical, to speak and think for themselves. When Viliami comes from the other side, and he has to learn and to adjust, you know, and it takes time, space, for adjustment from both sides. Okay? So, and it's very interesting because I think some of our audience will probably experience the same thing. What I find that more and more parents clashes because of that cross-cultural marriage. That either the man or the woman that was born and raised here and the other one comes from Tonga. Okay? But for a cross-cultural marriage, they may sound like Tonga. It's you either make it or break it. Okay. So coming back to our crisis at the moment, you know, because I think it's probably a crisis that it's not just New Zealand. The entire world are actually suffering in that crisis. And while we actually talked about parenting as very complex, let alone the added stress of COVID-19, how do you do parenting and looking at the age of your children? You are very busy. You don't have to say that. We already picked that up just by the age of the children, listening to your jobs. Age 9, 7, 3, and 1. That's actually like full on. And now, because Sylvia, you're a teacher, and there has been a lot of teaching online, and your children are learning online. How do you do parenting at this lockdown?
Parenting and teaching, two different things, totally two different things. If I may add to my professional job, I'm going to put on secretariat ki SAS Dominion. So assistant secretary for Dominion Baptist Church. And we are very busy with that community. I also help out with the Siaola work, from the backroom food parcels. So, and same as Sylvia, spare time that we have, we also do community work around it. Why I mentioned that, because I think it's very important that we paint a picture that, the full-on picture of us. For our story to be meaningful, and that's when I say parenting and teaching, they're two different things.
Yeah.
A question to me is, when do you find time to do parenting? And when I look at how we live, one thing that I would acknowledge, and Sylvia may have her own view around that, is that when you live with your in-laws, or someone at home apart from being the parents, you do acknowledge that there are times that you will rely on them for support and help, to give you space to breathe, to give you space to be able to teach, to give you space to do your work while they help. We have 4, as Sylvia mentioned. We can only manage on the day to do our work and make sure our 2 older ones follow their schoolwork from the school, because the 2 younger ones are still at ECE daycare, of which they don't have a normal routine. So with the help of our in-laws, a couple within how we tonga still locked down in so a part of our intergenerational homes, we are in lockdown in, so we have parenting and help and that's their help. Like now, while we are talking, so parenting, we have a routine. We can talk about school and day to day. we have a routine at night. We have a lot of tolu, and this has been or I take kids to school in the morning. But we allowing I make a lot of tolu. Yeah, a lot. So going to lockdown, we are not going anywhere. Go for a routine here in the evening, and we talk. Sai go hide me fiata. Me lot mama hiai. Go hide me oku tokanga kiai. So we allow that space. Pe mauta koto pe ku pe mauta utu. You know, maybe on my hand, olunga kariloa. Things will remind katiao, and now takoto pe ko story pe ko ke ki faiva he telefoni appropriate ma COI pe ko, but the time and space where okay te lava o talanoa kanatol pa lava e fana o talanoa mai. So ngai konsepi fatonga pe na tupu ke ai olunga kariloa. That's when I'll go lava ki lava or reflect or lava apply for them. So parenting, it's around fair time you fire. Apart me time ko routine fema via ko fire can set. But then he household ko interfere ko I fanga kui mo ni ke for routine. You know, that's another aspect to it. It can be parenting, it can be teaching, because in a school environment, routine especially in a Tongan household. So we have to be seen not so we mix up now. So we are I leo ke na whanonga mai ki ai I he time ko toa pe aho pe moe po mea whakaako pukoi mea ki he lotu pukoi mea ki ha we are here ke na o mai o talanoa mai not ko ki aru o talanoa ki hai mo hai. So we mea ia pio ke mea he my parenting. It's about we are so strong at the whakuia. Yes, we have people in the house, but we are ke na ulere mai ka maua. So thank you.
Malo pila.
Thank you. I will talk about the teaching part. Here. Every day. So yes, I teach from home. There's a lot of admin work as well. So you know, it's not a free ride for us teachers. You know, it is a very, very, if not busier time for us at home. So our two oldest are learning online as well. So Monite, so Fiafi Sapate to Thursday night oku Sekete Pile. So we're based oku ki office of Viliami, the one he's in. That's where he works. Guam now downstairs in the dining room oku Sete Mau Wako. So I find I have to have routine. And for me, as a teacher, I see the importance of ensuring that my children still have a sense of routine, because lockdown is not going to be forever. You know, once they go back to school, once I go back to school, it's going to be much harder to get back into a system. Or, you know, especially go expectation for my children to do their work and to do well. And so that's how we are set up at home. You know, they're lucky they're at a school where you know, the expectations are very high. So the kids are busy doing their work. I'm here you know, to guide them if they need that help. You know, we have a son, our one son has ADHD. And so I feel that this time with him at home, I've been able to learn a bit more about, you know, kids with neurodiverse, you know, skills. And you know, with him, I need to spend more time to be able to sit with him and understand the way his brain works. You know, I'm a secondary teacher, not a primary school teacher. So there's a lot of things I have learned about, you know, how to teach primary school kids. You know, sometimes I come up here and I forget that my kids are down here. You know, and it's a learning experience, a big learning experience for me as well. Is it easy? No. It's not an easy job. It's not easy to be able to balance my work and teaching my own students online while being able, you know, or expecting to teach my own kids. You know, and you know, my kids are lucky, to be honest, because they have a mum as a teacher. I'm able to kind of understand and navigate my way through the expectations, the systems that they're supposed to be running at home. Yeah. You know, so it is a, you know, trial and error. And I think it's like that for anyone, you know, during this COVID time. It is a trial and error. I'm not saying we're perfect. We're quite far from it. You know, some days it crumbles. Some days I lose it. But, you know, it is, again, it's encouraging to know that we're not the only parents. We're not the only family to be going through this. Yeah. But I think it's really a time where we have to appreciate the time that we have at home with our children, to be able to spend time with them, get to know them as learners, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and, you know, and so forth. So if there's any advice I would give, it's to ensure that there's some kind of routine, yeah, in their day. And it also, you know, gives the parents an opportunity to look forward to morning tea and lunch breaks, you know, where the kids run outside, you sit there and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, you can try and quickly send out some emails during that time or whatever. So yeah, I think routine is really, really important. Yeah.
Malo apito e Viliami ka Sylvia. I hear some great insights in the conversation tonight. I assume that now for no Viliami or where my in-laws of Monofo, Iapina, and as much as it is a great help, at times it might probably be challenging for you for the voice, you and Sylvia to be the only voice. I go in there, time now no for more fire. The cow moya hello to get any voice ya. Go fang out to voice ya mo pen but I might more fire. Of the lot of fire get the cow moya voice go get far now. It's beautiful to see that child here. Go figure see is it number 3? Number 3?
Yeah, that's number 3.
Okay.
We'll see. She's our little, I don't know. She's the, we'll see how she, you know, she's very extravagant.
Okay.
Different personality from the rest.
Different personality. So, but also coming back, Viliami, it's the exercising of the voice. Okay? And you also talked about connection. In order for the voice to be the voice, it has to be a connection deep within that. And you're talking of we have therapy. Before kids go to bed. Or we have therapy gonna review and our thinking. We're gonna review and our thinking that helps the kids review their set of beliefs. They will draw wrong conclusions to their thinking. And then will develop a wrong thinking to a wrong beliefs or head in the wrong direction. So to hear you do a review as a routine in the evening for our lunga hekari loa, it is so great. Whanongo koe e Sylvia ki ho tala noa, ke mau inga koe ai quality time pia moe whanau. He neongo hange koe ni, it is psychologically exhausted, and I give it up to you, because you are teaching like a teenager, and on one space, you are constantly going up to that teenager, going back down to that age group, which is actually primary school. That's psychologically, it's like that, you know, in a matter of few seconds, all in between. So that I will have to acknowledge. And I have to acknowledge probably yourself and all the mothers out there and the fathers out there who are teachers, and they have to teach their own children in a crisis, and it's never easy. One of the things that I hear from you, Sylvia, it's about the routine. And there's a lot of acknowledgement about the routine. And it's interesting because it does give us parents a peace of mind. Skills parenting, but if the parents themselves are not well, how can you manage the kids' emotions and the kids', you know, mental health and emotional health and physical health if you as parents are not well? Psychologically and emotionally, it's us parents. And to hear that you have the routine, that it helps you to have a peace of mind, that you look forward for your morning tea, you know, because you've got an extra load on your plate. High ADHD, we probably don't really understand the depth of it. But for me, ADHD. So to teach an ADHD young person, it's a one-on-one lesson. It's a one-on-one space. And you've got your whole class online. And you've got him, and not just him, you've got Loisi alongside that. So, but what an insight. What an insight, Sylvia, that you talked about the importance of routine, the quality time. And it's amazing to see when we have quality time with our children, how you said that through through the COVID and being home, you learned more about your son. You observed him, ayanga personality. And that's probably a positive thing in a sense. A positive things ki COVID-19. Kung tamsi fika tolu o puke exma. Pe apa mau pe ke crack ahono yolunga he funga lips he pe ko ni ma crack ma pe skin ya. Ko talo lockdown ni ko ni te kai ke ma akire ki tamsi. And he said to me the other day, Mom, I get a crack mata pa mo kukili. My eczema is clean, kotalange. That's what COVID does to us. COVID mami ke no for yapi no ke la yang nga we no for yapi, but I've got routine ke aya kirimi mo mi akoto atamasi, and he's not going anywhere. He's right next to me. Fight pe ako mo in my body pe mo kirimi o sai pe mo ex mom fight pe mo ako. You know, it's that multi juggling. And I hear you said, Sylvia, that about trial and error. And sometimes I wonder whether that also the definition for balance. Because as much as we think that this is balance, I think the reality is like this. I'm going to go for baseline, values, but we trial and error in practice.
So personally, I have to acknowledge so without mom, things will be very, very different.
Very, very different.
So role ngai fae ko role mahinga pani nei biga nga sapati fae tau siok make he pe hono celebrate dia sapati fae ngai sapati tamai to me, personally, the challenge to me is to how to let go of but come closer.
Yeah.
What can I do as a dad? Come closer so that's where I'm starting. Let go what the ngahi mea I he tu whatonga hange ko ni te whanatakin. Ko tu ba ko tonga ko o wa o tau whakapa te upe ko whakapa ki tau tamai o e kai pe ngā kai o e ala no ulu o e kaka tau whainga whakapa ia ko o wa o ia ki tunga ko ia pa tau sio e tai tau whai whakapa wa o ia ki tau ko whakapa ia to me is different. I want to get close to my kids. But now kai don't kai but kai and ea and now me kai whatever is there is the intimate in our that I am the person to run to. But now fe kai ka toi ha me kai they get it now mai na to o mau mai but to me to come close ke off ke whatever I can do to help in
the value doesn't change.
Value doesn't change.
But never will change your practice.
Practice, that's right.
Because whakapapa ke whaipe. Because for practice, you can define ke whakapapa I tonga, but practice you define ke whakapapa I New Zealand. It has to change. Ko nga ka lava ke work.
That's right.
Ko how ke tau whehui hoko. At both personal and professional level, what advice would you give to the parents regarding demonstrating unconditional love and discipline during lockdown?
I never we feel mawinga. Kono mawinga ka te au ai feel ko ni. Oku ko tanko topa ke au tonga. Tanko na papia yau pia ko whakarea koe mo mau papi ma tamaiki e ma whanau he whakau pa ko whakarea rewa he awe no tau hi mai eiki. Pako inga ku koe mo ui o ku kau e lotu pa mo mena e ako ia ke mo ui. Kau ia koe fo i lai nei ke koe mea fua ia ki mo ui. Pia pau reo tau whema ki tau true to what has been said. Avo tau hi mai eiki ya koe ofa kotoa pe ta tau ai pe koe ha o pe mau e whai ke whanau so koe fui mea fua ia ka te au ia e fui konga koe ha e mahu inga koe personally so for my personal thing that's to me fui mea fua ia ko hanga o seti pe koe fui mea fua ia koe ka te au ko lava o pe te lava to'o fai practice koe pe te whai fui practice koe adjust practice koe, but the value he tau tui, pa mo tau lotu, but that's how you adjust, that balance, So personally, ko foi mea mahu inga ia ka te au. Professionally, ko mahu inga pe ke tau whakatonga he ta whakoe ni. Koe tau tolu kakai Pasifiki kau e kau tonga I he time lockdown pe ni ko time whanatain pa tu tau sio whakasetistika ke whonua ke lahi ono tā e tau whanau lahi ono tā a kakai whiwhine pe koe mātua tangata pe koe nofo wheke ike I he time ni moe kaiha a moe whaihia o tau tā I mua ngai na whakoia te hange pe ko ku lawe ane nai it's very important for our children to recognize who is to listen to, who to run to for comfort, and who to trust. So, maupinga ia koe tau tānoa parenting to me personally and professionally. That I have to bring the two together to make sure that it's going to work for my children. So, I have to bring the two together. You can't do this and then you go to your professional jobs and do different things because you're saying this, but you're practicing different things. So you have to bring the two together to me personally. So maupinga ia ka te awhi tawakia. Ilo the context of what's happening in the big picture. And then personally, what you're going to do about it. Because if it's going to work for you, that that you're contributing to the bigger picture. Either minimize or decrease the numbers of violence at home, but at the same time you share that with your kaunga api. Because I know at this particular time, my context go different tupu. Maybe other families out there would be in the same situation as me. They can, whanongo mo ako, so, it's that, personal, professional, but at the same time, we have to bring the two together. Malo.
Yeah.
Malo whaiwhikau. And yeah, exactly what Viliami said. It's really important, to keep a consistent practice between personal and professional. Because the last thing we want to do is to be portrayed as being hypocritical. And at times, it's quite. It can be difficult to take off your professional hat and wear your personal hat. Sometimes it's hard to wear both of them, or to take both of them off at the same time. And I think for me, demonstrating unconditional love and discipline during lockdown, to me, there is, displaying unconditional love. To me is not something that is different during lockdown, if you understand what I'm saying. If anything, it should be reevaluated and looked at as parents. What is unconditional love? We have the spiritual aspect of unconditional love. It's that knowing God and that love, your faith, and having that you sharing that love with your children, having that kind of unconditional love that you would that you believe that God has for you. It's the same kind of unconditional love you have for your children. But I think at the same time, that unconditional love is tested a lot during lockdown. I know, and speaking from experience, because I've come to realize how much we rely on, the schools and the teachers in the classrooms to kind of give that unconditional attention and love to our students. During lockdown, I feel I've had to reevaluate a lot around that. Sharing the same insight as Viliami as well. It's about trying to achieve that consistency as well, but coming from a place of faith. By no means, as spiritually strong as I should be, but in saying that, I know that love is from faith, is from my own personal love and experience of God. In terms of discipline, I would say out of me and Viliami, I'm more the kind of, how would you say, I crack the whip a lot, metaphorically speaking, with my kids. Viliami's more calm in his speaking, in his mannerisms. I'm more kind of get it done. It's either or. If you don't do that, these are the consequences. And I think we both level each other out. I'm quite, loud at home. I have a very strict routine or expectation of my kids, and that's just me normally, the way I operate on a professional level as well. And again, when that comes down to the discipline, I also have to kind of pull back a little bit, because I'm not dealing with soldiers. I'm dealing with 4 young children, but I think, like Viliami said about hitting and things like that, or abuse on women and children, and we also have to be very aware of our us as Pasifika being overrepresented, I think, in their statistics.
Yeah.
But it's also important that we kind of take that time to reflect on on the forms of discipline that we use. I know kids are not easy to raise, and at times raising your voice is even more detrimental, and I can vouch for that, than hitting, whether it's hitting or raising your voice. I think it comes from a time, if anything, during this lockdown, this is a great time for parents to reflect on their own forms of discipline. Viliami is not the same as mine. I'm not the same as Viliami, but we've come to a place where we have to balance it out as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Malo and Viliami ka Sylvia. I'm just hearing how you talked about the unconditional love. And unconditional love, we actually attach it to God. One of the things that I personally see in terms of the unconditional love has got to do with boundary. And I hear you say that, Via. Okay? He go we ke tarada to offer ya ni ko manata ke to tahana e pe mai ke te lo Saane o lakan ka te au ke fatau pe ai drugs I tamasi I ko hi ke if pe ne drugs rather than him ke au o kai ha o mai ake in the drugs ke ne ngawe aki. And also some parenting style o ku the unconditional love. Or define you give everything that the child asks for, and you let the child do whatever they want. That brings me unconditional love. Offer that free mana or we are boundary and it's very clear with the boundary associate them with red zone. They've got unsafe space. Because boundary go tau fe ma go tau fa now ke tau ofa iki now dolu. It's like a playground. You are safe to play around within this boundary. O ilo lelei he matam sila ko ma tamai tangata lalahi ma to fa fok amawa mo pinsman. Mo tamai tangata lalahi, we make all the mistakes that we made as parents. And we owe those two sons of ours massive apologies, and we've done that not just once, but a number of times. The two younger ones, after we seek help in between, we have the two younger ones. So the two younger ones, we nurture them and they grow up. But very interesting to watch the two parts of our lives in terms of our skills in parenting that we are constantly facing. So talking about get discipline, now aware now get boundaries. This is the boundaries, and I truly believe we can go do it that. We can go do it on the now. We will ruin the relationship with now. Ka wo do it on discipline now. Ko taha ngai discipline o mga aki emawa. Kono remove me now and I privileges. But I'm see lahi na au ki ako pe hoko fatamaki ai. Ko first me ako na remove me tam si lahi ko talangi ai. Say goodbye ki he kapasi. He kapasi gives him independence. Kene he ka mai pasi te hawe afa ke me tonolo os patoga mai ki apin ye ko tamaka tau tahao noya ko si tahao tau kiba. So ko raki me na remove ko tankai te fa he kapasi e tropu ko e piki ko. Those are the kind of discipline. But how would you appeal ko tamako talangata kay tikala ko device ko tay niya ko be ko no siya to device be ko. So obey be ngai fo nga practical ke set ake ngai boundary ko in. But that actually brings me to to the second to last question. I'm mindful of our time. Is there any advice which you give to the parents who are experiencing their children experiencing anxiety or low mood or disrespectful behaviors? What advice would you give to those parents? Or what would you do as parents if you see that in your own kids?
Ako may mga pia if I would provide advice to seek help.
Yeah.
Ko we kai pe ke te ai ha me ma ui ngai ka ko te fo iloi that you need help.
Yeah.
So you need to seek for help.
Yeah.
Which means whatever it's out there, but the first step is to realize that you have to seek for help.
Yeah.
Ko nei lava via nei ki he ADHD ko matamasi I think it's very new to me he ku wanga whakauka whakatonga koe aku.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aku lau ia e au he mwe lau whakatonga koe pau pe koe.
Yeah.
But Via was on ngata.
Yeah.
Via was adamant koe ngā koe experience koe classroom.
Yeah.
No, we have to seek for help, professional help. Kalawa ke toko ni lelei tau whanau. And this is one of the things that we said. Ka mea ku alwe kau sei nai me kau palangi, ai ko na waki King's College, or seek for help. O na mana toko ni for kids like our son, but not our son. So and this I think that broke my heart around. Okay, we have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So, but to me, to break that cultural knowledge, so we to actually acknowledge that I have to accept that needs to seek for help. That's the first thing that has to break. And my advice for anyone, you have to accept that you need help and go and look for help.
Yeah.
So go te alugita or look for help. That's another step that you have to work it out how to get the help. But the first step is to acknowledge that you need help, and that would be my advice. Malo.
Mia?
Malo, absolutely, 100% agree with Viliami. Seek help.
Yeah.
Again, we may look at our own kids and think, it's, I'm lucky because I've seen this many times during in the classroom, and I've always said, no, this kid is not ba'u. This kid is so bright. There's something there, I've seen kids who intentionally do things, silly things, remove you, put into the corner, learning difficulty, or something. And I think, there are more children who are undiagnosed.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for parents to step back and just have just think, is my son matengata, which is fine, but is my son ba'u? Is he angakovi? Is he, because we have to be mindful that what we say is going to be, and I'm guilty of that, I sometimes lose it and say things I shouldn't be saying. But at the end of the day, if your child needs help or you need help, you need to seek, you need to ask for help. And I think, as parents, we also need to, like I said, look at our kids, are they, in this lockdown, have you noticed that they can't concentrate for long periods of time? Or if you've noticed that your child is low mood and becomes snappy and so forth, is there something going on? Especially at our teenage years. A lot of our teenagers haven't seen their friends or their partners in a long time.
And grieve the loss.
Yes, and they're grieving that lack of contact, that lack, you know, or, you know, physical, you know, being in the presence of each other.
Yeah.
And instead of, you know, shouting and saying, you know, we have to understand we were once that age.
Yeah.
And you know, teenage years, the moods go up and down, and that's all part of their hormonal, you know, balancing out. But it's also, I think it's very important as parents that we step back and go, she's you know, locked up in the room a lot. You know, you've noticed that she might have some scars on her. You know, that's not a, oh, you know, you have to seek help.
Exactly.
So, and that's from a professional side as well. You know, we teachers see things, we have to, you know, we follow processes. So
it's one thing to seek help. It's another thing to seek help that help your child.
Yeah.
Ko madam si fika tolu na puke. Puke pau ave ki falmahat. Ave o si. Ko tamai ko to ka te au matoto open appointment. Tamai to ka te au. He has to check whether this sickness is physical or psychological. Pe check ki tamasi o tapehe o fixe palpare ma ko physical na hoko kono kisino. Ke hoko pe palpare maya. Emotionally ke tamasi. I think your son also have got like psychological problem. Okay, I recommend leva he to get farmaki ke ave tamsi ke sio ki a psychologist. Ko talangiamo psychologist tonga, child psychologist tonga, pe ailani talamai ikai. Ko talange, let me find my own. Ko halema ave tamasio ave ki he psychotherapist ko tonga. Very interesting. I sit in her session or listen. Kilono trace palparema. It went down. My son grieved for the loss of my mother. Because I looked at it, it's his grandmother. My mother raised my son when I was busy working full-time. So to my son, he felt he's lost his mother. Emotionally to my son. That took some time for my son to come right. But before me seeking help, tamasi tai whakakau, tamasi hat, ngai foi rei polo na whai, and I truly regret that. So I think I'm sharing my story at the same time in the space. Ko tipe aonga ki ngai family ke nau whanongo. That it's important via ngai ko tala noa. Instead, ke tau quick to label. It's probably wise to seek help. Even if you find out that your son or your daughter is okay, and that's even better. You know, it's them wanting your attention. But coming down to our last question.
Sorry, can I just quickly share?
Go for it.
Quickly. I thought it might be helpful to share my experience of getting my son diagnosed.
Yeah.
If that's okay. So, you know, my son has always been matengatai, never had a sense of fear and, you know, that kind of stuff. And you know, I never liked it when people said, oh, tamasi, you know, anyways, my son started primary school and, you know, kamata ke hae ngahi report ko me whai ako, you know, he does this, he does that. And I went into his classroom and I observed Suli. And I, you know, he was wandering around the room. And met time wandering around the room, him and as a little boy. And my heart sank because I thought, oh my gosh, and pay attention. There's not much hope here. So at the end of it, the teacher asked a question, and from wherever my son was standing, he answered it straight away. And I was flabbergasted because I thought, how can his brain, you know, zone in intricately, but he's not on the mat. Okay, and fidget with, and that raised questions for me. So what happened next? You know, again, Suli was, you know, not, making the wisest decisions. And I went into the school and I challenged them on what I thought was unfair. And I said that I didn't want them to label my son as being problematic. There's no reason for them to do that because my son doesn't come from a broken home, there's no reason for them to do that. And I said to him, I didn't like the way that you guys are handling my son. I want my son to be assessed. And from my own experience, the way I observed my son, it mimicked many of my island boys that I taught at the time. And I just thought, this is not right. This is not right. So anyways, the school said, okay, we'll do it. So they referred him to a psychologist, but I went private. I went to my GP. And so I pushed, to be honest, I had to push through the system to get my son looked at and get my son diagnosed. And, I can be a very pushy person. And I think some of my questions were made some of the psychologists and so forth, quite nervous. But I didn't want my son to be added into the statistics of students who are being, behavioral, because this is the thing that I've noticed was that, there's so many kids going through our system that are undiagnosed. Yeah. They're so bright. Yeah. Yet their futures are going to end up either crashing with the law, where they ended up in prison, or they might be dead. Yeah. And that's what I didn't want for my son. And, I had to really put my foot down. I spoke to many people. I got many advice. So, me sharing this story, I hope that if there's anyone out there listening and they think that maybe their child might have, might need a diagnosis or might need to be seen by someone, push for it. You have to push for it. And, where my son is now is, he's come a long way, and his ADHD characteristics and tendencies are not going to change. That is who he is. But the way we react to him and his situation and having more patience to teach him makes a whole lot of difference. Imagine a child going through the system being told that you're naughty, you're doing this, you're stupid, and sorry not to use those words, but that's detrimental. And you'll end up with kids.
The labeling.
Yeah, labeling, and they will end up in the wrong side of the law. So sorry, and I'm getting quite passionate about this, but I hope that my sharing of our journey will help some of the families and parents out there.
Yeah. And I think, Sylvia, you should not be sorry that you share your story. I think privilege is ours that listens to your stories and your willingness, Sylvia, to be vulnerable, because that's a vulnerable space, for people to listen to a teacher that struggles and have to fight because your boy is just not another boy. He's your only son. He's your only son.
Yeah, absolutely.
As much as hi, Suli. As much as a psychologist see your son as another client, he's not another client. He is your son.
Absolutely.
And alone plays great values into the space as a mother. And that brings us to our final question. And what do you think we should do as a community to support each other in a parenting journey? Bila?
Because as I mentioned earlier on, parenting is a very personal, very different, very diverse, depending on culture and country. But I think, given that your questions is around the community, to me, I do believe, when we talk about values, reflecting on what is currently happening right now with the pandemic, we come together as a community for vaccinations, right?
Yeah.
Tabulea whakawholofola pia. Action speaks louder than words.
Yeah.
But yet now, as a community, that's what we should be doing.
Yeah.
We should be, as a collective, come together.
Yeah.
Koe tau lotu ia, na panga maari, pia koe tau hi whanau, o tuha mo tau me whunu o tau nofo ai.
Yeah.
Pia kono whaanga pia e lotu koe o tau whai, ke tau hanga o race, ha whanau, ke nau tuha ke o whai mea aonga, mo whai mea lava, ke whanua mo family. So as a community, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. So if we applied it for vaccinations, why can't we apply it for parenting as well?
Exactly.
So, he tau ilo pe, he tau rea tonga, ko tau uraki apea koko aki.
Yeah.
Imagine if we come together as a community to address, parenting.
Yeah.
And then imagine the impacts that will flow on to the community.
Yes.
And our children and their, our future generations.
Yeah.
Waipe mo tau lea, koe hakau e ahoni, koe whanua e au kahau.
Whanua e kahau. Yeah.
So, ka pau tau tui ke ngahi lea lelei, o tau to'onga mo ui, o tau noho whakatonga. Why can't we practice it and come together and try and make a difference i he tau parenting? I he whanua o tau nofo ai, o iai hono lao, iai hono tutu uni, ianga e tau hi e tau whanau. Why can't we do something about it as we do for vaccinations, for example?
Exactly.
So, Malo koe whakaloto lahi pia, Malo.
Hello, Phila. Sylvia, is there anything that you'd like to add?
I think, everything's been said by Viliami.
Yeah.
From a teacher perspective, we always see low numbers.
Yeah.
When it comes to calling on the community for, for things to do with our children. And, there are many reasons for that. There are many reasons. And it's never about because they do not care. I don't believe that. Maybe priorities are not, as we think they should be.
Yeah.
But, there are many reasons for that. And I think if there's one thing we all have in common as parents in the community is that we parent in our own ways. I think if we were to come together as a community to support each other in parenting, there's so many things I think we have to take into consideration and understand, backgrounds. I'm always a big believer in balancing the traditional cultural aspects of parenting with the more modern, lens. But we also have to think of, maybe those who just prefer to go the westernized way or prefer to just go the traditional way, because we have people of all of those walks in life. I think, again, like Viliami said earlier, parenting is so complex and it has to be molded to the parents or the individuals and their family, together. Because it's not like a one hat fits all kind of approach. So if anything, I think like Viliami said, we're all coming together for the vaccination. Maybe we all came together because there was an incentive at the end of it, vouchers or whatever. But bit more serious, is that it's really important that we do address parenting as a continuation practice, and it's not something that is like a modern trend of 2021 and there's a different hack for 2022. So malo opito.
Alo apito Sylvia ka ma Viliami. I think ko whanongo koe he tau tala noa nei ai whakaukau na mo tala noa I mai ane nā yangi he tau tala noa. In terms of professional and personal, I he parenting, kupau ki consistent. Okay? Kia te anga pa te hanga whakarea koe tau I whanau, koe hanga e mātua o mo ui aki ai mea o kunau tui ki ai. live what we believe. Ko uhi he hange ko eni ko mau tolu ko eni ko fai fekau ko mau malanga ko ya sia si fanu mai mau fanau ke malanga ko o fa mo malanga ko umia ko ya ko omi ko ki api o fie mau ke si fanau he me ko malanga I. Ka paurewa e sio e whanau o tatau e mea ko malanga I he tūnga mo e mea ko no ko whai ko I api ni oku lawarewa ke tui e whanau ki he koloa o tauhanga o mo ui aki. Ai ko e tau hi whanau ko e tau mo ui aki. Kaya ngaya e busio ko eni ki e tau tapo tala noa ko e ni pia mo whamaloa ki e te ki moa whamapopa peki whakakaukau ko e ni e Viliami na ke rea aki. Ko ino tau womi o whakataha ke tala noa ai huhu malu I. O kulahi ange ai mau o ku hoko he tau tangata, mo tau tangata, mo tau tangata. Ko hiko e vai o e tau hi whanau. I e mau ko ne pandemic ko no hoko ko e ni he COVID-19 ba. Pero parewa wai ki rea o ngau aki o pehe, a small act of kindness can go a long way. If every one of us reach out to our cousins, our aunties, our nieces, our nephews, with a small act of kindness, it will go a long way. Mo whamalo atu ki a te ki moua, whamalo whoki ki he kāinga whanonga ko toa pe, mo ki mō tolu pai ke mō kau ngā kau, mo ki mau tolu he hoa koe ni, but it will actually, you will listen to it later on. Thank you for joining us. Hamalo heni ki he foundation note, I ono sponsor mo no whakapaanga whoki o prokalama koe ni. Malo au pito.